I come across diverse personalities in the course of a day, and I remember one time many years ago, waking up in the morning. I was working with an art gallery, which is stationed in London, and we just brought an exhibition to Accra, and Art Accra 1995, and it had some very interesting artists in there. Papa, no, not Papa. It was Usman Kumar, and it was Lana Wong, and there was Angela Beckwith, famous international photographer who does a lot of taking a lot of pictures of African cultures and communities. All those people. So I was hanging out with them throughout the day. And I remember that I woke up in the morning, and I live very close to a very densely populated area. I live in an area in Accra called Kanda, which is sparsely populated, which is like a middle class area. And then I crossed the road to my barber's in an area called Nima, which is quite densely populated. And, they have some nooks and crannies. And I was walking through these nooks and crannies. And by the evening of that day, I was sitting with a Danish ambassador and having dinner and chatting. And I remember at a point when we were I was just looking around and trying to figure out what kind of privileged life I lived and how I didn't see it so much as a privileged life, because it was like the sort of life I'd lived from childhood, being born to parents who were well-to-do and were friends with, if you like, important people. My parents were friends with head of state, whose son was a friend of mine. I'd go to theirs for weekends and things like that. So on the flip side, in my neighborhood where I would grow up, I grew up with the children of the working class. So growing up and seeing those two kinds of life, there was always some kind of a reminder of who I am and exactly what I want, and where I want to go. And I like the idea of observing the people that I came into contact with, because I always thought about them and myself, the things that I had and the things they didn't have. It was almost always when I was with people who didn't have as much as I did. I would often think of the things that I had and took for granted, and the things that the people that I was hanging out with didn't have, and how it didn't matter to them. They lived their life. And at that point we're all sort of on a certain level, where nobody was what's the word? Nobody was higher than the other. But somehow when something was mentioned and somebody needed something, I would be pointed out, for instance, somebody wants, maybe the ice cream man is passing. I'd usually have some money to buy some, maybe the next person wouldn't. And at that point, you'd see that everybody was sort of looking up to me to buy some ice cream for them. And, things like that always got me thinking what my future would be if I was going to be like that for forever. And I find that, this is like 40 years on. I find I still do that. I mean, many times I'm among people, and if I find that I'm the one who's sharing, who's giving out, or just basically sharing. I like sharing. I like paying attention to these people and trying to understand why. I think it's more of looking at them and thinking what they think of me, and maybe what they think of me in terms of the fact that, okay, maybe I have more than them, and they have little, and if I would give them, that sort of thing. Those are some of the things that I often think about when I'm by myself, and and this is not to say that I have a whole lot, or that I don't have plenty, but the little I have, I like to share it, and I like to see people happy, and that and eventually it's led me to actually form or provide a service whose foundation is to make people happy, because the service that I provide as a tour guide, a tour operator and a guide, and I just basically and I cook, so I add my cooking to my tours, and I basically want people around me to be happy, and that's what drives me as a person. That's what drives me. I want to make sure every time that we're in a group and we go anywhere, I find that I'm lending a hand to, especially when it comes to, organizing the group, and if there's food, I'd help to prepare it and things like that.